Thank you all for being here for this debate among some of the candidates seeking to be the MP for Ottawa Centre in the next Parliament. My name is David Reevely. I've been a journalist in Ottawa for longer than I care to admit. It is truly a joy to me to see a packed house of people who care this much about their community and want to cast an informed vote. It is wonderful that you are all here. There are 9 candidates on the ballot, as you know. 3 of the candidates who represent parties selected for the televised leaders' debates are on the panel here. I'm going to tell you, though, a little bit about the other candidates, some of whom are here. They are Andrea Chabot of the Canadian Future Party, Zed Shabib, who is running as an independent, Marie-Chantal Lange of the Christian Heritage Party, Cashton Perry of the Communist Party, and Mike Salmon, who is running as an independent. If you are one of those people, please stand up so that the folks who are here can see you and approach you, perhaps at the end, to hear about what you would bring to the role. The members of our panel are Joel Harden, who is running for the New Democrats, Yasir Naqvi, who's running for the Liberals, and Amanda Rosenstock, who's running for the Greens. We had expected Paul D'Orsonnel of the Conservative Party to be here. He had agreed to participate, allowed us to advertise his presence, pulled out at the very last moment, which, I don't know, maybe that's all you need to know. But we have a killer group of people for you to hear from. It's been my privilege to cover a couple of them. I think Yasir Naqvi has won every election he's ever run in Ottawa Centre, except one, which brings us to Joel Harden, who has been the MPP, and Amanda Rosenstock of the Greens, who's a policy analyst and is running in a riding where the Greens have historically done really well. I know we've sent at least one to City Council in recent memory, and all definitely worth hearing from. Members of the panel will be invited to give an introductory speech of 2 minutes each. Then I'll pose questions, all of them submitted online or from you in the audience. Bob explained how to submit more. I'll get fresh batches as the evening goes on. And every candidate will get 1 minute to give a response. Brian Carroll in the front is our timer, and you will not be able to miss his cues. Finally, each candidate will get 90 seconds for concluding remarks. And when it comes to the questions, I'll tumble through them more or less randomly. The questions, as I say, for the candidates, they come from you. Some were submitted in advance. You can raise your hand if you want to summon a volunteer. They'll give you a card to fill out, and then you can feed. And as you've heard, to cover the costs of the event, donations at the end will be extremely welcome. The stuff is not that expensive, but it's not free. Part of the reason it's possible, though, is thanks to the folks at Knox Church gave us the generous use of this space. Thank you for that. So, with that, I invite the candidates to introduce themselves. We drew for the order just before we began, and to highlight the issues that they consider important. We'll begin with Joel Harden, then Amanda Rosenstock, and then Yasir Naqvi. Mr. Harden.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joel Harden. I'm proud to be the candidate for the NDP in this election in Ottawa Centre. I want to begin by acknowledging this moment we find ourselves in. The sovereignty of our country is being threatened by President Trump. He's already engaged in tactics that he has openly called economic coercion. The vast majority of voters in this riding are progressive, and they do not want a repeat of those tactics or Trump North. So I have some news to deliver to you that comes not from the NDP, but from Eric Grenier of CBC Poll Tracker that I can invite you to look up yourself. At this moment, according to Mr. Grenier, there is a 2% probability that Mr. Twaliev will form even a minority government, 2%. There is an 87% probability that Mr. Carney and the Liberals will form a majority government. So most people in this room will get the Prime Minister you want. The question for tonight is, who should be our Member of Parliament in Ottawa Centre? Some will say it should be a member of the governing party. They believe that's the way to get the things we need here. I will respectfully beg to differ. Our transit system is struggling. Poverty is rising. The cost of housing and essentials has soared. And we don't have a serious climate strategy, but we have had a member of the government as our MP for the last 9 years. That's why I think we need a new Democrat at the House for us. We've had it before in Ed Broadbent and Paul Dewar. Someone who can raise the level of debate beyond insults. Someone who can bring our amazing local solutions to Parliament Hill, like downtown revitalization for everyone, repurposing federal buildings, building a world-class public transit system again, and promoting clean hydroelectricity imports from our neighbors in Quebec. These are some of the concrete solutions I want to work for as your MP, and there's no shortage of other great ideas. I look forward to the debate tonight. Thank you.
Next in the speaking order, Amanda Rosenstock of the Green Party.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. My name's Amanda Rosenstock, and I'm honored to be your Green Party candidate in Ottawa Centre. Prior to running, I worked as a policy analyst, first in clean technology and then sustainable transportation, because I'm committed to building a more sustainable future for Canada. I'm running because I do not believe that the Liberals have done enough to deliver on our community's priorities, which I'm hearing at the door are more reliable public transit, more affordable homes, and access to primary care. But I know there's a lot facing our country right now, and that this election is a critical one. As Green MPs, we are ready to work across party lines to defend Canadian sovereignty and to build the green economy, all while putting the well-being of people and the planet at the center of everything that we do. Today, I will put forward our party's vision for a more resilient, more sustainable, and fair Canada. You can read more about my vision for Ottawa Centre on my website, Rosenstock4, like the number 4, oc.ca.
Thank you for that. And now, Yasir Naqvi of the Liberals.
I love Canada. I've been reflecting a lot lately on why. And I keep going back to 36 years ago when my family and I came to Canada. I was 15. Both my parents were lawyers, but they were not able to practice law for a single day because their credentials were not recognized. So they did what many families do. They bought a small business, a motel. All of us pitched in. I cleaned rooms, I washed bathrooms, I made beds while going to school. A recession hit and we lost everything. Our family of 5 moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment. Mom and dad got one room, my sister got the other room, the boys got the living room. My brother slept on the couch because he's older than me, and I slept on the floor. But you know what? Our family pulled together. We worked hard to rebuild our lives. It was not easy most of the days, but we had each other, our neighbors, and our community. I'm a product of Canada. My family and I came here fleeing dictatorship in search of freedom. Canada took us in, not with fear, but with hope. Canada gave us a chance, and I have spent my life giving back. That chance has shaped me, and now I'm fighting to protect it. Because right now, it's under threat. Electing Pierre Poilievre is no different than electing Donald Trump. Same playbook, same politics of division, same slogans, same nicknames. Canada deserves better than that. Canada is built on kindness and strength. We need calm and competent leadership. Mark Carney has the experience to help navigate Canada through this crisis. As an international trade lawyer, I have relevant experience to serve our community and our country. I will stand up for Canada. We will make Canada strong. Thank you.
Thank you, all 3 of you, for those introductions. I appreciate your desire to applaud things that you like and candidates you like. Let's do a little of that, but try to keep it to a minimum so that they get more time to talk. Although, I gotta say, looking at the list of questions that we have submitted, I do not see United States or Trump in any of them. There are some foreign affairs questions that we will get to. If you're in the audience and you have particular questions about international trade, about dealing with the United States, get them in now so we can get to them in the second half. But I'm going to kick off the questioning then, and I'll start with Amanda Rosenstock and then go to Joel Harden and then Yasir Naqvi with questions about housing and drugs. The question is, as each day passes, it's becoming more evident that there's a housing crisis and a drug crisis. What do you plan on doing to address this? Ms. Rosenstock.
There are a few different points, obviously, along the housing continuum from homelessness to ownership that we can attack this problem from. The City of Ottawa's official plan recognizes that missing middle housing, so that's the type of housing in between single detached family homes and large apartment buildings, is a key solution to give both renters and first-time homebuyers more options that can accommodate their needs. I support this approach so that young professionals don't have to flock to the suburbs when looking to upsize. As your MP, I would also work more aggressively with the city to lift prohibitive zoning restrictions that prevent larger unit sizes in multi-residential development from being built, and to push for to speed up changes to the federal building code to allow for larger unit sizes and more energy efficient homes as well. With respect to the toxic drug crisis, Greens are in favor of safe supply. No, it is not an ultimate treatment for addiction, but it allows, oh, I'm out of time, but yes, we are in favor of safe supply. Yes, so
it allows.
As we've heard from the director of the Inner City Health Clinic here in Ottawa, Dr. Rakesh Patel, it is an essential tool to allow people to get to a point where they're stable enough to interact meaningfully with the healthcare system, and then to access the other supports that they need to go on and reintegrate within society. So we are absolutely in favor of that.
Mr. Harden, your turn.
Thanks for the question, David. We are really lucky in the city to have some of Canada's leading housing experts. One is Carolyn Weitzman. And Carolyn is very clear to policymakers on this question. We should have three goals: ending homelessness, not mitigating it; protecting renters and making sure that people can stay in their homes; and building aggressively non-market housing. The failed aspect of housing strategy, according to Carolyn, in the last 30 years has been the belief that the private sector is going to do this with government support. But the private for-profit development sector doesn't exist to build affordable housing. They exist to build market housing. So in the NDP, we believe in the definition of affordable housing, which Carolyn supports, of 30% of disposable income. We believe in working with the 14 co-ops in this riding who can expand and are prepared to expand, with Centretown Citizens Ottawa Corporation, with Salus, with Options Ottawa, with Operation Come Home. And we can end homelessness if we follow what the Finnish government has done and repurposing vacant federal office spaces immediately, not with reports that go on for years, for use either for temporary respite housing or more permanent production with non-market housing providers. And we have them in the city. We should work with them.
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi.
Well, so housing is a big issue, and the best way to deal with the housing crisis, in my view, is to build more housing. And that has been what my focus has been over the last 4 years, to ensure that we're building as much housing as possible in our community right here in Ottawa Centre. In fact, over the last 4 years, since I've served as your Member of Parliament, we have been able to attract over $1 billion from federal government to build over 3,000 homes. Homes for all kinds of people, for working families, for young people, and people who need affordable housing. That includes housing by not-for-profits like Ottawa Community Housing, Multi-Faith Housing for Initiative, Cornerstone Housing for Women, and CCOC, those very important organizations. Ottawa Centre is very unique because we have a lot of federal land that we can repurpose to build housing. I'm thinking of La Breton Flats, Tenny's Pasture, and Confederation Heights. And that's the work I want to continue doing, to make sure that we work with our community associations to have master plans for those lands that are inclusive and sustainable, not just building condos, but building inclusive communities that accommodate everyone. We have an incredible opportunity. We're on the right track. We have more to do, and I look forward to doing that work.
Thank you. We're going to stick on this general subject because I think there's a lot more to explore. I'm going to ask a question that's a little more directly about drug use, and particularly visible drug use in Ottawa Centre neighbourhoods. And the question is, what would you and your party do to protect neighbourhoods from the harmful impacts of drug use and ensure public safety for all residents? We'll start with Mr. Harden, Mr. Naqvi, then Ms. Rosenstock.
Thanks, David. And yeah, I apologize for not getting to this in my last answer. What I can say is this morning I had the occasion to speak to Jesse Dunlop from Arlington 5 and Jennifer Hegel from the Red Apron. These are two Centretown business owners who had their businesses broken into over this weekend. And I think it says a lot about Ottawa Centre that their call for community action was not to lock up neighbors who are struggling with addictions and with mental health. Their call was for far more community resources. They want the anchor program that we fought hard for to be able to respond within minutes. They want supportive housing to be made available for neighbors. I visited Vancouver last summer, David, and I encountered somebody who was very inebriated, and there was a respite worker right there to take that person to a safe place to sleep in the city of Vancouver because there was a vacant building, government building that had been repurposed. Why can't we do that in our city? Why have we been writing about this for 4 years? Why don't we create the safe places for neighbors to go so they can find respite, so they can find treatment, and we can build a new social compact in our downtown?
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi.
So I take always the advice of our public health officials as to how best we deal with the toxic drug crisis in our community and how we make sure that we keep our community safe at the same time. And I fundamentally believe that we have to invest in prevention, we have to invest in harm reduction, and invest in treatment. I was gutted when I saw Doug Ford's government here in Ontario take away funding for our safe consumption site at Somerset West Community Health Centre, because what it did is basically put a lot of our vulnerable neighbors on the street using drugs. And I fought hard and I made sure that we got $4 million from federal government to provide those supports to both Centertown and Somerset West Community Health Center so we can have those services provided so that those individuals get healthcare-based services while we also keep our community safe. Similarly, we have received funding for Operation Come Home so that young people have been found appropriate homes and services. So that's the approach we need to do. It has to be rooted in compassion, and what we need to do is have solutions that is based in healthcare, because that will not only save lives, but also make our community safe.
Ms. Rosenstock. Ms. Rosenstock.
Yes, so first, a point of distinction for the Green Party compared to the other parties is that we support decriminalization of all drugs for personal consumption. We view addiction as a public health crisis, not one of criminality. So that's one point. Secondly, this is not a new problem. In fact, this problem has only grown under successive governments. And we need to see much more significant investment in supportive housing that provides the wraparound supports that people need to deal with their mental health and addiction challenges while having a stable roof over their heads. So we know what the gold standard solution is. Now it's a matter of political will to actually implement it.
Thank you. There is an infinite amount to talk about there, but I'm going to change subjects. I want to ask some questions about transit. And I'll start with Mr. Naqvi, then Ms. Rosenstock, and then Mr. Harden. The question is, the federal government is primarily responsible, or its part of funding transit is through funding capital projects, typically, like building new lines. Do you see a role for the federal government in supporting public transit beyond that, and things like operating funding?
Yeah, thank you. So federal government has taken the role of working with municipalities across the country and fund the building of public transit. We have seen that in funding for phase 1 and phase 2 of the LRT. Most significantly, we have invested $350 million to change the entire OC Transfo diesel run fleet to electric buses. That is a significant investment that federal government is making in Ottawa to make sure that we clean up our air by getting rid of diesel buses and have electric buses. Most recently, what we also did, as our transit system is having challenges, that we have given City of Ottawa $180 million over 10 years for capital costs so that they can free up that much money for operating so that we can make transit more reliable. So is there a world where we can have operating costs? Of course there is a world, and something that I look forward to working with the community, but we're not neglecting Ottawa, and we're making sure that we're making important capital investments in our public transit system so it's clean, safe, and reliable.
Ms. Rosenstock.
Sure, it sounds like Yasir knows what criticism is coming here. So first off, I do not own a car, and I don't plan on buying one. And it's because it's cheaper and it's better for the environment. Both my partner and I are very concerned about the climate crisis. As your MP, I would prioritize working across party lines to ensure that federal funding for transit provides the kind of funding that Ottawa desperately needs. Yes, as Mr. Naqvi spoke about, the federal government provides funding for capital expenses, which are the type of funding to purchase physical buses and infrastructure. But if we can't pay the bus drivers to drive those buses, and we can't pay the mechanics to repair our aging fleet, what good is it to continue giving the city capital money when they have expressly asked for operating funds? This is something that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has been calling for over a decade. Additionally, we need more accountability from the city in terms of how they spend those funds that they receive from the federal government. And so I would like to see all federal funding require the municipality to show their plan to increase ridership year over year.
Thank you. Mr. Harden.
Thank you. So I would direct everybody in this room to look up a fantastic report that was released back in October and announced on Parliament Hill. It's called Putting Wheels on the Bus. It was launched by Equiterre and Environmental Defense, two environmental organizations. And what they want us to strive for as a goal, David, is to double public transit usage by 2035. And the only way that can happen, it would be equivalent, thinking about the greenhouse gas emissions impact, to taking 20 million cars off the road. The only way to do that is for the federal government to start getting into the game of doing what Amanda just mentioned, funding the operating systems of public transit. We know there is now 74,000 fewer service hours for OC Transpo because of cutbacks. And my daughter's here tonight, I'm sure other people tonight have been waiting for a bus in the cold and do not enjoy the experience of that. It lessens people's ability to take public transit. So I would invite the federal government, Prime Minister Carney, to follow the lead of that report, which includes all major municipalities of this country, all environmental organizations of this country, all the transit operators. Heed that advice, double public transit usage. Let's make a game-changing move on public transit.
I'm going to ask a follow-up to that, although because it's so closely related, let's keep the answers to 30 seconds. Sorry, Brian. And the question is, we have two municipalities here, two municipal transit systems, sharing roads in many cases. Should the federal government play a role in planning transit between Ottawa and Gatineau? We'll just go down the table. Ms. Rosenstock, Mr. Naqvi, Mr. Harden.
Well, the permanent public transit fund that the federal government has committed to, which is supposed to come online in 2026, actually does have a stream of funding for transit systems that cross provincial barriers. But again, it doesn't provide the types of funding that our municipalities critically need. And really, this issue is one of fundamental about the way that we fundamentally finance our cities. We do not finance the delivery of our public services sustainably. Municipalities only receive 8 to 10 cents on every tax dollar collected in their jurisdiction. We need to renew our fiscal framework.
Mr. Naqvi, should the federal government play a role in planning transit in the capital area?
Well, first of all, I don't think the federal government should be running the public transit system in Ottawa and Gatineau. I don't think that will be an appropriate use of skill set. I think where federal government through the National Capital Commission, which has a really important role, is in better planning and coordination with City of Ottawa and Ville de Gatineau. That's where I think we need to make sure that we're using our roads and infrastructure carefully when we're planning, for example, the expansion of LRT or Repubus on the Gatineau side, that there's better linkages and coordination. That's where I can see NCC playing an important role, but I would not advocate for federal government running a public transit system that serves both sides of the rivers.
Mr. Harden, what do you think about the role of the feds in helping plan transit in the capital?
Well, I think the way they could meaningfully do that, David, is by funding the system. And if the federal government has $30 billion to give in tax subsidies to profitable fossil fuel companies, they should have long since given up on that unnecessary subsidy to folks who already have more than enough and fund the operating costs of transit systems between our two areas in Gatineau and here in Ottawa. I was shocked to hear from former Minister Fraser, who's a parliamentarian I respect, him reject the October report that was put forward that I mentioned earlier, talking about the need for capital projects instead. The federal government is the richest level of government. It needs to give the money to Gatineau and Ottawa so we have a world-class public transit system like we had when I was in high school here.
Thank you. Stop that. So we'll go in reverse order. Harden, Naqvi, Rosenstock. The question is about Queen Elizabeth Drive and Lansdowne, so not totally dissimilar to transit. What's your perspective on the active use of the canal parkways in Queen Elizabeth and increased use of Queen Elizabeth Drive to serve Lansdowne 2.0? It's a federal parkway, it's a federal question. Go.
I certainly salute any and every attempt to have active modes for people to get around our city, David. I know there's always a negotiation between people who use different modes of transport in the city, and I spent 6 years at Queen's Park dealing with a government that often wanted to pit car users against cyclists, against people with disabilities who use power chairs. The fact of the matter is we all want to be able to get around the city safely and get home to our loved ones. I am shocked at the amount of accidents that are happening, the amount of collisions that are happening, the amount of unnecessary suffering that is taking place because there aren't safe ways for people to bike or to use their power chairs or to use their scooters to get around town. So I really enjoyed the summer festival programming that the NCC did last summer. I saw a lot of neighbors making use of it. It was nice to see a stage available also, so there was an entertainment value to it. I look all over Europe and parts of the world, cities like Bristol in England that are remaking themselves. A city like Montreal, which has become the cycling destination for North America. We can be part of that, but it takes intentional planning, negotiation, and I would certainly love to convince Prime Minister Carney to do that.
Mr. Naqvi?
Thank you for asking this really important question. It's something that I've had many conversations with communities who live along Queen Elizabeth Driveway and Cundall Drive. I'm an avid user of active transportation. I'm a runner. I run along the canal all the time. This may not come as a breaking news to anyone. There is no consensus on this issue in the community. Some people love the entire summer being used of QED as an active transportation corridor, and a lot of people just do not like it. So NCC is going back to weekend bike day plan again. But this is where the conversations I'm having at NCC, what I'm advocating, because I am concerned about safety of individuals, especially with all the micromobility and the speed associated with it, is can we look at ways of creating segregated pathways, one for cars, one for active transportation, and one for pedestrians. And I think this is where we can do some planning and really create a shared perspective along the canal that could be enjoyed safely by everyone, and that's the work I want to do if I'm re-elected as your Member of Parliament.
Ms. Rosenstock, what do you think?
Yeah, so I am a huge fan of the NCC days. My partner and I enjoy them. We've enjoyed them for the last 3 years that we've been in the city. And for Greens, anything that we can do to get more cars off the road and incentivize more people to use active transportation and to walk and to roll, I am absolutely in favor of and committed to working towards.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping it brief. Here's another downtown question. As downtown continues to struggle its way back from pandemic-era closures, what role do you see for the federal government in getting workers back downtown? And then the corollary to that, obviously, is what are your views on remote work for federal public servants? Let's go the other way down the table. Ms. Rosenstock, Mr. Naqvi, Mr. Harden.
So with respect to downtown revitalization, I actually support the action agenda that was published by the Ottawa Board of Trade, which calls for measures to increase the downtown population by 40,000 residents by 2034. So as your MP, I would work with partners to increase density sustainably in our urban core through incentives for missing middle housing, as I mentioned before, and larger buildings along transit corridors. The action agenda's growth targets will also have the added benefit of bringing 15 to 20,000 new riders onto public transit, which will help raise the revenue needed to sustain OC Transpo's operations over the long term. And the public service question as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually have a bit more of, I guess maybe a more, I wouldn't say radical, but a different perspective on this issue. So with all of the challenges that we've seen, oh, I'm out of time, so.
No.
Okay,
Finish
with
the
all
thought.
with all of the challenges that we've seen and the lack of consultation with public sector unions around the Return to Work Directive, I think it's clear that what the public service values, has valued out of the shift to hybrid work is enhanced well-being and greater flexibility. And productivity has also gone up as well. And so why not finally open the door to the possibility of a reduced work week or even a 4-day work week? You know, Iceland implemented a reduced working week without cuts to salaries in their public sector, and they saw service provision and productivity either stay the same or increase.
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi, work
So-
downtown, revitalization, federal workers in the downtown core?
Absolutely. So here's the fact. Hybrid work is here to stay. Anybody who thinks that somehow we can go back all in the office or everybody's going to work from home, I think we need to find the happy middle. And my advocacy has been to get to a point where it's customizable depending on your job, depending on where you are most productive. Our focus from a public service perspective should be the output, not the input. And that's what I continue to advocate around. And that is why one of the most important thing I did while I was a member of parliament last 4 years is convene a downtown Ottawa revitalization task force so that we can have a conversation around how do we rebuild our downtown? How do we get more people to live, work, and visit downtown? Because I don't think the 2019 model before the pandemic was a good model either. Our downtown was still hurting. And so this is the work we're doing. It's not work that has to be done could be done by one level of government. It's something that has to be done by municipal government, provincial government has a role, our small businesses, our resident association. And that's the important work that we are doing that includes converting our federal buildings into housing. Jackson Building is a great example that I've been working with the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition to see if we can create more housing for Indigenous people in the community, and not to mention attracting more visitors, working along with Ottawa Tourism and other partners.
Thank you for that. Mr. Harden.
Thank you, David. So I take what my friend just said to heart. However, the president of the Treasury Board was quite clear. There's an expectation from the federal government that people report to the office 3 days a week. And I have talked to too many people at the doorstep who commute across our city, contributing to the congestion that we're seeing all over our downtown, who leave their home office that was built and funded by the public to sit in a decaying building with mice and mold and rats to talk to an Indigenous community on Teams or on Zoom. And that seems to make no sense to me. What does make sense, as a manager myself, is a flexible approach to the workforce. If you're working for the federal government as an airplane mechanic and you have to report to the Ottawa airport, there is no such thing as telework. But if you're helping an Indigenous community with programming and wellness work, and it's possible for you to work more than 3 days a week at home, and it's contributing to less congestion in our city and less emissions, I think we need a far more flexible approach. And I think that's why you've seen so much frustration around the return to office protocol. It's ham-fisted and too rigid. So I would try to convince Minister Carney to have a relook at this, to have a more flexible approach, because telework is good for the planet, and it's also, I think, more productive, as Amanda mentioned.
And one more question about the state of downtown. I think it's a big one. We'll go Harden, Rosenstock, Naqvi on this, and it's about the trucker blockade in 2022. Many residents felt that the response from levels of government just wasn't good enough. They felt unsafe going outside, they felt unsafe going to work, they felt sometimes unsafe even in their own homes. What did the federal government get right? What did it get wrong? And what did you do? What would you have done as the MP for Ottawa Centre in that time? Harden, Rosenstock, and then Naqvi gets to go last on that one.
Well, David, I'm writing a book on this, so one day everybody will know my full opinion. But I will honestly say the work we went through as a community in surviving that 3-week ordeal was significant. And Catherine McKenney and I and many other city councillors went truck by truck, and we tried to talk to Canadians who felt that the people of Ottawa were their enemy. And what I learned from that moment is that the disinformation which has infected our country and political discourse, not just here but around the world, we have to find ways as Canadians to communicate to each other again. Eventually, thanks to the work of Paul Champ and Emily Taman, we got a waiver signed where many of those truckers left and they would not be hit by the multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit. But until that happened, we had decibel breaking, horn shrieking, we had blockages in our downtown. Catherine and I tried to help a building full of seniors relocate to a for-profit long-term care home because they couldn't get their PSWs in. It was a disaster. But what I'm hoping we can do going forward, when there are controversial issues that divide Canadians, our profession, we have to find ways for Canadians who live in all places of this country to talk to each other, to have confidence in our political system, so something like that never happens again.
Ms. Rosenstock, what did the federal government get right? What did it get wrong?
Well, in terms of, I think, what it got right, I'll have to think on that one. But in a situation like this, I think all representatives of all levels of government need to be absolutely seized to finding a solution to end this kind of disruption, while at the same time, working to respect the charter rights of individuals to protest. And so, yeah, that's what I would say on this question.
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi.
Well, I think it was we all remember, it was a very, very challenging and traumatic time for our community. And our community felt that all three orders of government failed them. City of Ottawa could not control that protest and put an end to it. The province was nowhere to be seen. They totally just walked away. In fact, did not even acknowledge that Ottawa exists. And in the end of the day, it was really the federal government that had to invoke the most extraordinary power within its toolkit to put an end to it. And I, from the very get-go, as your member of parliament, took that responsibility very seriously, advocating to the Prime Minister, to all the relevant ministers, talking to legal experts, including people like Paul Champ in our community, to find the most thoughtful, legal, constitutional way to put an end to that convoy occupation. And we were able to do that because of the intervention of the federal government. Moving forward, we have to make sure that this never happens again, that people are able to protest peacefully, but when it crosses the line, we do not end up having our community, people who live here and who do business here, taken hostage. And I think that is the challenge before us, and we need to make sure that we've got all the right tools available, all three orders of government, so that we keep our community safe and in a peaceful manner.
Thank you. We have, first of all, we have the first pack of supplementary questions. I see Trump in there a bit. We're going to get to that shortly. But we have a whole lot of questions to do with Israel, Palestine, and Gaza. I'm going to ask a couple of them. I know that these are extremely sensitive subjects. People have very strong feelings. Let's listen to what the candidates have to say and be respectful. So I'll go with Naqvi, Rosenstock, Harden on this one. The question is about the recognition of Palestine. I'm going to read it exactly as written. If elected, will you be ready to support Canada's recognition of the state of Palestine as our trading partner Mexico has already done?
The answer is yes. In fact, I've been advocating for the recognition of Palestine as an independent state as part of the two-state solution. That's something that needs to happen, and Canada has a very important role to play in that. I've met with then Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Joly to make sure that we do everything in our capacity to bring peace in the Middle East, to stop the killing, to make sure that hostages are returned, so we can get to a place that where two states, both Palestine and Israel, can live next to each other peacefully, as many countries do. It's an emotional issue. There's a lot of emotion that I hear in the community, and it's rightly so. But somebody who's learned and practiced international law, I want to make sure that Canada always obliges by its international obligations, work with partners, and get to a place where we can realize the creation of Palestine living next to Israel.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenstock.
So point blank, yes. Recognizing Palestinian statehood is, for our party, is a symbolic but meaningful step in recognizing Palestinian self-determination, and one on the path to a two-state solution, which is our party's official position.
Mr. Harden.
Thank you, David. I think I would agree with Amanda in saying it's the first step. This is something that should have happened a long time ago. And I do find it frustrating when some people make the argument that recognizing the state of Palestine would be rewarding terrorism. It's disappointing. Because I think, sadly, what Mr. Trump has entered into our world, and I guess we're going to get to him in our further questions, we're not living in an age of justice anymore. We're living in an age of vengeance. And we will never find peace and reconciliation through vengeance. We will never see a situation in which a genocide can be justified. And we are seeing a genocide unfold before our very eyes. And I think our children will judge us in 10 to 20 years about what we did right now in this moment. And I was proud that the federal NDP caucus on March 18, 2024, members Green and McPherson introduced a motion which my friends supported to call for a two-way arms embargo in addition to Israel that would include the demilitarization of any weapons and any civilians being killed. Canada needs to be a loud and proud voice for peace, David, because there are too many voices for vengeance.
Another question. Another question that touches on some of the same, certainly some of the same sensitivities. We'll go in the same order on this, Naqvi, Rosenstock, Harden. And it has to do with anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism in Canada. And data shows that Jewish people in Canada have faced the highest increase in hate crime compared to other groups. Media and politicians often equate Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, talk about them both in the same breath. What steps will you take to counter anti-Semitism in particular?
David, that's a very important question, and there has been a very significant rise of anti-Semitism here in our community in Ottawa, but across the country, and I think all of us should take a note of that very seriously, because hatred towards one group of people, I can tell you from my own personal experience, is going to come towards you as well. And that's why on a policy level, my big area of advocacy is around a bubble zone legislation, very similar to what I brought when I was Ontario's Attorney General to protect abortion clinics in the province, to make sure that places of worship are protected from any protest, so that people are able to go and worship their faith peacefully. But most importantly, the work I'm doing is bringing interfaith communities together. I've been very lucky to work with people like Rabbi Michael Berg, Reverend Gary Vandermeer, and Imam Farhan Iqbal, where we've been hosting interfaith gatherings in churches, in mosques, in synagogues, where people are getting to know each other as neighbors and talking about what is in common as humans and bringing us together so that we can understand each other's perspective. That is the important and hard work we need to do. And as your member of parliament, as a member of this community, as a Muslim member of this community, I will continue to that important work so that we live with each other as neighbors, and we should push against anybody who divides us as a community, because that only impacts and harms all of us.
Ms. Rosenstock, what steps will you take to counter anti-Semitism?
So I actually think in Canada that we are fairly lucky to have a robust human rights legislation at both the federal and provincial levels. And I think as an elected representative, it's incumbent on us to keep those doors of communication open with affected communities, to ensure that they feel heard, and that they feel like we are providing them with the information and helping them to access the tools that they need to pursue any serious cases of discrimination and hate.
Thank you. Mr. Harden.
Thank you, David. Important question, one in which I've done my own learning. I will credit two people that I would recommend everybody present for further learning on anti-Semitism. One is the great Canadian Bernie Farber, former president of the Canadian Jewish Congress, who's founded an organization called antihate.ca. And when Bernie came to do an anti-Semitism training of the Ontario NDP caucus at Queen's Park, his remark to us was to recognize that anti-Semitism, as one of the most insidious forms of prejudice, they're all insidious, but in his view, stems from ignorance. And he pointed directly to work done here in our city with Jewish elders who are brought in by the Ottawa Police when synagogues are defaced with swastikas and other hatred to help the perpetrators of those acts meet with Holocaust survivors as a tool of Holocaust education. And what that has done, rather like I was trying to say earlier in my answer about the convoy, David, is try to reach those whose hearts have been poisoned by hate and to remind them of the travesties of the past when we dehumanize each other. So I salute the work of the Jewish community on that front. I think we need to find ways to wrest people away from hatred, but I know we can do it, and I'm confident we have the ability to do it.
Thank you. Let's ease up to some of the Trump questions. This is a nice, easy opener. It's about strengthening Canadian democracy. Harden, Rosenstock, Naqvi on this. Democracies are under attack all around the world. What do you and your party plan to do to strengthen democracy in Canada?
Who's first?
What did I say? Harden, Naqvi, Rosenstock.
Well, I'll tell you something on a practical level, David, I would love to do if the community gives me the opportunity to serve in this role. Sven Robinson, who was someone I trained with when I was a graduate student, used to do something when he was helping families, because 90% of the casework in a federal MP's office concerns immigration. Every time Sven would work with a family, he would invite them to do a community cultural event at the office, and his goal was trying to hold one of these per month. And the role of that in our democracy was helping people learn cross-cultural learning and cultural competence when you're meeting someone from a culture with which you're not familiar. So the next time someone tries to narrate to us through Facebook what Russians are like, or what Iranians are like, or what Malaysians are like, or what Guatemalans are like, the great thing about what happened in Burnaby, BC for the better part of a decade and a half was that neighbors had already had a chance to learn cross-culturally. Their children had played together, they'd met small businesses from relevant communities, and it was a way to deal with hatred and disinformation, utilizing the parliamentarian's office and the resources of it to bring communities together. I would love to host one of these per month so we can learn more about each other in this city. I think that's a great use for our democracy.
Mr. Naqvi, what would you and your party do to strengthen Canada's democracy?
So first of all, I'm really proud of our community. Look at this room. You really care about your democracy, and that's why you're here. And look at the very civil, thoughtful conversation we are having. I think this is an example of a strong democracy. One of the things that I spend thinking a lot about is the lack of, or the decrease in voter participation. How many fewer people vote? I mean, look at, we had two provincial elections in a row recently in Ontario, and we had close to 40% of people voted. So what I spend a lot of my time in is spending my time in schools. Grade 5 students, grade 10 students, grade 12 students, Forum for Young Canadians, talking to young people and really stressing upon them how important it is to get involved, to vote, because our democracy is only as good as the people who choose to participate in it, and making them recognize that if they don't vote, they're not just only not voting, but they're giving their vote to somebody else, and somebody else will make the decision. The second big element for me, and maybe that's personal, is talking to new Canadians. It is so incredible when you're out there knocking on doors and you meet somebody who's a new Canadian citizen and is going to be voting for the first time. I spend extra time with them to see if I can earn their vote, because now they will be partner with us shoulder to shoulder in strengthening our democracy. That's the way I see strengthening the future of our democracy, and I will continue to keep working on that.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenstock.
Well, you know why people are voting less and less? It's because they feel that their vote doesn't count under our first-past-the-post system. And that's why Greens have championed a system of proportional representation as long as we have. I'm incredibly proud of the work of our Member of Parliament for Kitchener Centre, Mike Morris, who seconded a motion actually put forward by the NDP for a National Citizens Assembly on electoral reform so that we can have a democratically selected system of proportional representation. Ultimately, unfortunately, that motion failed, but I do hope that if we can elect more Green MPs who are willing to eventually form the balance of power, and are willing to make that issue a confidence issue, we will finally be able to ensure that the representation of seats in Parliament adequately reflects the will of the electorate.
You know you're in Ottawa Centre when proportional representation Gets the biggest cheer from the crowd. I love it. It's more directly now on the United States. And I'll go Rosenstock, Naqvi, Harden on this. And I'm going to, because I like the cheeky way this is formulated, I'm going to ask it as written. Why do all parties in Parliament support Trump's arbitrary demand that Canada increase its defense spending to 2% of GDP?
Well, why do all parties support it? You know what, honestly, I don't know. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, the way that, you know, the Liberals reacted when the threat, well, now reality of the tariffs, you know, first came to pass, you know, it was very reactionary. But I do agree that, you know, we need to focus on with Mr. Carney, focus on what we can control, and build up our own resilience in Canada, because clearly we can no longer rely on this long-standing relationship with our neighbor to the south.
What did I say? Mr. Naqvi, yes. Why do all parties in Parliament support the target of 2% spending GDP on defense?
I don't think it was arbitrary. I think it's part of the NATO treaty that countries spend 2% of their GDP as part of their membership into NATO. So I think it's a legal obligation on part of Canada. But I think the bigger question right now is around our national defense. I agree with Amanda that our relationship with the United States, in my view, has structurally changed. First of all, the trust is broken. I don't know if we can really rely on the United States for our protection. Not to mention, we've got Russia as our neighbor as well up in the Arctic, and the way they've shown aggression towards Ukraine, we have to be really mindful as to what their future plans are. So in my opinion, we need to invest in our defense spending and particularly focus on the Arctic to make sure we make our north safe. That not only is going to protect us from any Russian aggression, but it gives us leverage when it comes to the United States, because then Americans will need us as well for continental safety. This is one of the, I think, important tasks we need to undertake if in my view, if Liberals are elected, so that we can make sure that not only Canada is safe, but we demand through that respect from the United States as well.
Mr. Harden, why do all the parties in Parliament support the target of spending 2% of GDP on defense?
Well, I think, David, it's important we define the parameters of the question. What are we spending 2% on? I think Mr. Trump would like us to buy more weapons from Raytheon and General Dynamics. But what, frankly, I would like to see, because I've met far too many of them, is support for veterans with PTSD. Support for veterans, far too many of whom I've met at the Mission Shelter, far too many of whom are, having served our country, broken as individuals. And it breaks my heart every time I meet one. And I know the Legion has great programs to try to get people housed, but the very fact that that exists shocks me. And I would welcome people to look up reports from Veterans Affairs. I also want to say, particularly in this moment, we have to broaden our conception of national defense. I remember when those huge floods hit Orleans and Constance Bay. Who was called to the site to save the neighbors? It was the members of the forces. And I was pulled aside by one commander in Constance Bay, and I'll never forget the conversation. And he said to me, he shooed the reporters away, no disrespect, David, but he shooed the reporters away, and he said, Mr. Harden, your goal is to make sure I am never called to one of these scenes again. I'm here to serve my country, but your goal is to make sure that there's a future for my children. I love my country, I will serve my country, but I do not want to see my country ruined by parties that refuse to stand up to the fossil fuel industry. Words from a soldier.
So let's explore some of that a little bit. We'll go Naqvi, Harden, Rosenstock on this. How would you support economic and trade diversification to make sure Canada is not reliant on just one partner, especially in the Trump era?
Thank you for asking that question. And as I mentioned, you know, I'm an international trade lawyer by profession, so I feel I've relevant experience to add as your member of parliament to both the work of parliament and to the government on this very important issue. As I was saying earlier, our relationship has changed with the US, and I don't think this is just a 4-year problem that we just need to rag the puck until Donald Trump is gone. I really think there is something fundamentally has changed in the American society. And whether it's Republicans or Democrats elected in the US after Mr. Trump, unless he gets his third term, we need to do better. So what we need to do is, one, we need to create an infrastructure and access east-west. We have spent so much time building access that is towards south to sell to Americans. We need to combine our 13 economies into one so that we as Canadians operate as one. But by doing that, we need better relationship with Europeans and Pacific Rim countries to make sure that our ports are not only linked with each other, but allows us to be able to work with other like-minded countries. And that's why Mr. Carney, first thing he did, he went visited United Kingdom and France, and there's many other places who are also looking at Canada for those better relationships, equal relationships, and that's the work we need to do, and that work needs to start now.
Mr. Harden, what should we be doing to diversify the economy and our trade relationships?
Well, it's a great question, David. I figured you were going to ask this. And as I was preparing a response ahead of time, I was thinking about Ed Broadbent. And I know if Ed were here, he would be literally pounding on the table saying, I told you in 1988 that if we put 75% of our exports in one basket, this is where we would end up. We would one day find a cruel American president trying to bend our economy to his will. So one of the great things our country has is incredible capacity for research and production. As Jim Stanford, one of my favorite economists, always says, 80% of the things we make in Canada actually stay in Canada. We have the ability to do a lot, but we tend to ship out a lot of raw timber, a lot of raw resources for manufacturing and refinement elsewhere. We have to stop that. And one way in which we can make that change in a decisive and quick way is to bring over affordable and emissions-free hydroelectricity from our friends in Quebec who are looking potentially for new dance partners, because when they sell their surplus electricity to the Americans for a loss, they don't benefit. But we would certainly benefit from a new partnership with Quebec and Manitoba, both of whom have hydroelectricity they could sell to us, so we could redirect our economy, trade with new nations in the EU, in the Pacific, and around the world.
Ms. Rosenstock.
Yeah, so Greens are also in favor of diversifying our trading relationships with like-minded allies. And we also recognize that we need to double down on the value chains within Canada that provide a strategic advantage relative to our global peers. And one way that we propose doing that is to move away over time from this dependency on our unprocessed natural resource extraction, and in building out our value-added capacity. Value-added processing generates significantly more tax revenue and economic activity than raw resource extraction alone. For example, Sweden, which exports its lumber primarily as a finished furniture product, extracts 5 times more value per tree than Canada's raw log exports. Processing actually will create thousands of good-paying jobs as well across multiple sectors and regions.
Thank you. And a question, big picture question about dealing with Donald Trump. And I'll go Ms. Rosenstock, Mr. Harden, Mr. Naqvi on this. What would your approach generally be to dealing with Donald Trump? Do you stand up to him? Do you try to make friends with him? Do you try to give him some symbolic wins and see what you can get in exchange? What's your approach? Ms. Rosenstock?
No, I mean, I think we have to be tough, and we have to base our negotiations on facts. And, you know, focus on what's best for Canada and what will help us ultimately advance our interests and grow our economy.
Mr. Harden.
Thanks, David. So I would say with a bully, as we've all experienced in our life, one needs to project strength, but not the kind of strength the bully expects. More than likely, most bullies we meet in our life have lived with some form of cruelty, so they decide to project it on others for the rest of their life. But what Mr. Trump doesn't understand is that Canadians are strong, and we're going to adapt to this moment quicker than he realizes. Doing some of the things to our economy that we've talked about in this debate, but also seeking out new dance partners for our culture, in promoting our local culture, for our inputs and our research. And I think we have to project the strength, but we can't sink to his level of disinformation and hatred. This is why I really think it's important that when we made the decision to create a fentanyl czar based on a false threat of fentanyl exports to the United States, that was a terrible decision. We gave credence to something Mr. Trump was saying. We should have simply said, we have an addictions problem in our country and in yours. Let's work together on empathetic solutions at street level to solve them. That would have been a reasonable response. He probably would have made fun of on Truth Social, but we would have been better humans and we would have shown real Canadian leadership. That's what I call strength.
Mr. Naqvi,
So,
how do you deal with Donald Trump?
So first of all, I think you need to outline certain fundamentals that are non-negotiable. Number one, Canada is not for sale. We will not let it be a 51st state. Canada is a proud, independent country. That has to be carved in stone. There's no negotiating this, and I will always stand up for Canada. There's the three things you have to do. One, you have to fight back on tariffs. Dollar for dollar, you need to make sure that he knows that if he's going to cause pain on our workers and our businesses, that there is cost to his economy as well. Number two, we have to make new friends. New alliances like we've never imagined before, and I was talking of Europe and Japan and South Korea and Brazil and Argentina before. These are important countries that we need to work with. Number three, confidence. We Canadians are resilient people. Indigenous people have lived in this land for millennia. The rest of us have come from different parts of the world. We live in cold winter. We need to demonstrate confidence, and if we speak to him with confidence, we will make sure that Canada will remain strong.
Thank you for that. In the latest, and I think the last set that have been passed to me, there are a couple of questions about Indigenous issues that I want to get to. So we'll go Naqvi, Harden, Rosenstock on this. And the question is, how does your party intend to resolve the matter of the unceded land with the Algonquin Nation?
Thank you for asking this question. And the best way to deal with the matter of unceded, and we are living on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin land, is to work with the Algonquins to make sure that they get the rightful ownership of their own land. When I was the Attorney General of our province, Ontario was involved in those negotiations to make sure that Algonquins from Ontario are working with Algonquins from the Outaouais side and negotiating with federal, Quebec, and Ontario government. So in my view, it's something that you work with the Indigenous people, with the Algonquins, to make sure that they get their land back. That work is ongoing. It's slow. I wish it was faster so that the rightful owners of this land would have land in their possession. The key there is respect for Indigenous land rights.
Thank you. Mr. Harden, your turn.
Well, I take what my friend said to heart, but I have to admit, it's difficult to hear those words when I know that there are federal government lawyers right now in a class action lawsuit denying the right to water for Indigenous communities in this country. That is a truly shameful chapter we are seeing in our country right now. And I know the First Nations Caring Society had scored major wins on child welfare agreements, but we have a class action lawsuit, David, right now on the right to water, and our lawyers that work for us are in court telling the justice that there is no sacrosanct right to water. It's not enough to do land acknowledgements. It's not enough to do the performative aspect, which is important, of recognizing that we have a treaty relationship, or even when there is unceded land, that we have a responsibility to do right by your neighbors. I will also name the issue of nuclear waste in the Ottawa River. Grand Chief Savannah McGregor of the local Algonquin chiefs has been absolutely crystal clear. The two-paragraph definition of nuclear waste usage that the federal government currently has is pathetic. And we need to make sure we protect the Ottawa River for generations. The Algonquin are here to do that. Are we ready, through our federal MP, to meet that challenge?
And Ms. Rosenstock, how would you resolve the matter of unceded land with the Algonquin Nation?
So I support the Algonquin Nation exercising their Section 35 rights under the Constitution to the fullest extent. Our party actually wants the federal government to renew its relationship with all First Nations. We want to take steps towards abolishing the Indian Act and negotiating on a nation-by-nation basis new agreements that would set communities on a real path towards self-determination.
Thank you. So we'll go Harden, Rosenstock, Naqvi on this. The question is about support for Francophones in Ottawa Centre, which I think we do not talk about enough. If you're elected, what would you do to promote the development of Ottawa's Francophone community? And vous pouvez répondre en français, si vous voulez.
Oh, vraiment? OK, excellent.
Mr.
On doit
Harden.
le faire. Donc,
Mais ce n'est pas nécessaire, si vous voulez.
well, there's no simultaneous translating devices in the room, so I won't do the performative thing again. I just said that we shouldn't do that in the earlier question about our Indigenous neighbors. So what I will say is, it's been wonderful to learn from Francophone organizations who are so strong in this city about really practical problems that happen when we can't offer constitutionally protected rights to access services in French to neighbors here. I want to give a specific example that was brought to my attention. Imagine an elder woman who is needing very personal care in her home being provided to her by someone who does not speak her language. It's a very dangerous precedent we're setting when we don't require personal care agencies to ensure that from a staffing perspective, they have people there providing care that people deserve. It is disappointing when I run into Francophone neighbors who talk to me about how difficult it is to get their programming and their festivals are organized relative to their Anglophone counterparts. 30% of the people who live in the city speak French as their first language. It makes the city more beautiful and better to have these collision of cultures, be they French or English or others. We need to make sure, because we have a constitutional obligation, that we have the services and the support for all of that work in our city. 100%. 100%.
Ms. Rosenstock.
Yes, so for the Green Party, we're committed to increasing investments in minority language education, in post-secondary in particular, and in the cultural institutions which help the language and the culture to thrive and to benefit all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi.
Do you know that there is no French public secondary school in our downtown core? Our kids have to either go de La Salle in Lower Town, or where my son goes to Uma de Laurier on the Nepean side. So I have been working, as your member of parliament, I've been working with a group of parents from the Francophone community who've been advocating to build a French public secondary school. Good news is that we were able to secure funding from the provincial government, but most importantly, we're building it on federal government land at La Breton. They're in the process right now of negotiating an agreement with the National Capital Commission, where we'll be able to build our first French public secondary school with Ottawa community housing on top of it. So it's going to be a beautiful community right across from the new Arasoke library. So this is how I'm making sure that every single power that federal government could be used for the betterment for our local community, ideas that come from our community, you've got a partner and champion, and that school is a great example of that.
Thank you for the segue to the Breton Flats. We have a question I've been sitting on for a while, and it's about the senators and an arena at Le Breton Flats. If you're elected, well, you know what, I'm going to transform this question a bit, and I'll go Rosenstock, Naqvi, Harden on it. Should the senators play at Le Breton Flats? And if they should, what would you do to help the senators and the NCC reach a deal?
I do think that they should play at Le Breton Flats, and I'm in favor of seeing an arena brought closer to the downtown core. I think where it's situated now is just so inaccessible for so many people in our city. And so yes, I would work towards reaching a deal and doing whatever we can to revitalize and to build more housing as well and bring more business investment to that area.
Thank you. Mr. Naqvi.
I strongly support senators moving to La Breton. I've been working on that file with the NCC to make sure that from a public interest perspective, that there is a deal that works for everyone so that we can start construction. But most importantly, I agree with Amanda that it will be incredible for the revitalization of our downtown core. Imagine that whole section with with a new arena, with Arasoke Library, we've got the Pimisi Station, and then all the amenities that are available. Bronson Centre, through federal funding, is going through incredible revitalization as well. We have an amazing opportunity to really build that whole area with housing that is inclusive. That's what a G7 capital city looks like. So I'm very supportive of it, working on it, and I just want to make sure that public interest is well protected while that work is going on.
Thank you. And Mr. Harden. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, okay, thank you. Mr. Harden, should the Sens play at LeBreton Flats? And if so, what would you do?
I hope we get that question, because I would be happy to answer that question.
There's a way to submit it. Please do.
My answer is yes, by the way. Pardon me? Yes, no, the federal NDP has supported that, and we are in link with that. To answer David's question, however, my focus on this particular matter, David, is with the Ottawa Community Benefits Network and the Ottawa Community Benefits Agreement, because the story we can tell in Ottawa, unlike many of my friends in American cities where we've had stadium politics drain the public purse and take money away from affordable housing, take money away from public transit, take money away from things that make communities better and more inclusive, is that we have a partner in the Ottawa Community Benefits Agreement that has actually signed an agreement with the NCC, and we expect the NCC and the development partners to live up to that, because what we don't want is for the Sens to play in a community that was once a thriving working class community in LeBreton Flats, a very important part of our city's history, turned into something that most folks can't afford. I'm glad that we're going to see affordable, family-appropriate rental housing with 2 or 3 or even 4 bedrooms. I want to see that diversity as the Sens come to play downtown, because that's the kind of Ottawa I want to live in.
Thank you. Question from and for public servants and taxpayers. Question for everyone, really. Could you give a couple of examples of ways that you think the federal government could be made more efficient? I'll go with Naqvi, Rosenstock, Harden.
There's always, we can always provide better services. I think Phoenix has been a big waste. I think a lot of people will agree. In the community, the number of people we help with, public servants who work so hard, who've been faced with challenges with Phoenix, clearly we can do better. But for me, again, as I said earlier, what we need to really make sure that good quality public services are available to our civil servants. I'm really alarmed when I hear Pierre Poilievre talking about cutting 17,000 public servants per year. That's a degradation of quality public services people need, especially in this time right now where we have so much work to do as we rebuild our economy to be less reliant on the US. We will need our public servants to do that important work, just like they did in the pandemic. So I want to make sure that we have a robust public service that, of course, uses technologies that are available to it so they can provide even better services. But the focus in the end has to be quality public services for Canadians across the country, coast to coast to coast.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenstock.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the size of the public service, in my view, should be based on what our policy goals are, as well as what the needs of the population are. I also support leveraging the benefits of artificial intelligence and ensuring that the public service is adequately equipped to integrate this technology across all of their work streams. I know that the federal government is coming out with a report and a strategy on how to better integrate AI across the public service, but in my view, this is too late. We should have been much more proactive on this. The private sector is way ahead, and I've been using AI in my work, and I see the benefits. Obviously, there are points of controversy around it, but I do believe that it's here to stay, and that we need to know how to properly and responsibly utilize it.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Harden.
Well, David, I guess where I'll depart a little bit from my friends here is I've already seen the current federal government cut thousands of jobs at IRCC, CRA, and Veterans Affairs through the Refocusing Government Spending Initiative. So I take my friend's point about 17,000 fewer jobs, kind of lopsided, arbitrary cut I'm used to seeing sometimes from conservative governments. That's a bad decision, but I also think it's a bad decision to be cutting jobs at IRCC when we have, in this very moment, a backlog of cases of over 1 million people. And behind every one of those cases is a family looking to reunify a grandmother or an uncle or somebody often in a very difficult and delicate situation. So we don't need AI to reunite those families. What we need are human beings who are compassionate, who work for our country, to stay in their work, to make sure that we expedite and drain that caseload. I think the same thing about Veterans Affairs. I was speaking about veterans and PTSD earlier. So many people out there in our community, having served our country, are suffering. We need more access to treatment, more access to support, not less, on base and off base. So there's a lot of stereotypes about the federal public service, David, but it's pretty clear to me that if we want to learn who to talk to make government more efficient, we should be talking to people who actually do the work, and not Kinsey, not Deloitte, not IBM, and not Phoenix.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before we get to the closings, and I'm really interested to hear how you each answer this. So we'll go Rosenstock, Naqvi, Harden. What's something you've done that's made the world a better place that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. Well, you know what? So I moved with my partner to Ottawa about 3 years ago. And, as a transit user, as a very, frustrated transit user in the city, I've gotten involved with Ottawa Transit Riders, which is a local advocacy group working to, raise the voices of transit riders within our city and, influence the city to make better decisions around the planning of our transit system. And I will continue to do that after the election.
Wonderful. Mr. Naqvi.
I'm going to make it personal. I'm grateful to my parents for giving me such incredible opportunity, as I was stating earlier in my opening remarks, by moving to Canada. I think the values that they taught me, the values that this country has taught me, has made me a better person. I've got 2 young kids. My son Rafi will be 13 on April 27. I've told him throwing a big party for him the day after. And my daughter is 9 years old, and they bring, of course, a lot of joy. And I'm trying to do my best, just like my parents did, to make them good citizens, to good people, to good members of this community. Hopefully, they will grow up and be able to contribute to make Ottawa and Ontario and Canada one of the best places to live in the world.
And Mr. Harden. What's something you've done that's made the world better that you're particularly proud of?
David, for that,
Mr. Harden.
Okay. David, what I am very proud of, and it's part of politics that people don't often see, people see question period and politicians ripping each other's faces off most of the time, and they find it a little distasteful. And as my friends were saying in this debate tonight, people are sometimes discouraged when they see the theater of politics. But what happens outside when the cameras are off, as we fight for our communities, is actually a lot of collaboration. And I can say at Queen's Park, one of my proudest moments was when I was successful in earning unanimous support for Motion 129, which was called Vula's Law. And what Vula's Law did was affirm the rights of residents of long-term care homes, retirement homes, and group homes, that they have a right to see family caregivers and powers of attorney, and arbitrary uses of the Trespass to Property Act should not be done towards family caregivers and powers of attorney. It was inspired by Maria Sardellis, daughter of Vula Sardellis in Nepean, who was separated from her mom for over a year, as she worked through lawyers and processes, and ultimately she defied police, and she went to see her mom anyway. And I took that story to Queen's Park, and I'm honored to say I found support in the Conservative government to say, let's reaffirm the law. Lawyers have used that case in court, and I'm glad, because the people who built everything around us are seniors, are elders. And when they're in a fragile position, living in a care-assisted facility, they should be able to see their loved ones and their powers of attorney, and no one should interfere with their right to see their friends. No one.
Thank you. And now each of the candidates gets 90 seconds to sum up and conclude, and we'll go in the same order that we did the openings. Mr. Harden, Ms. Rosenstock, Mr. Naqvi.
Again, I want to end tonight by trying to acknowledge the anxiety that I'm feeling in our community right now. It's a difficult time. We're facing grave threats, many people are suffering, and some folks are losing hope that anything can be done. But you know what, folks? I still have hope. And you know why? It's because of the amazing people who live in our city. I have seen us get through tough moments before. Tornadoes, torrential floods, a historic pandemic, a 3-week convoy occupation of 500 vehicles. That's just the last 6 years. We'll survive Trump. But you know what? I don't want us to just survive Trump. I want us to do much better. I want us to elect a local MP that will bring our amazing solutions that are here to the House of Commons to fight for a much better Canada than we had before Donald Trump. I want that. I want to import clean, affordable Quebec hydroelectricity for our energy independence so we're not reliant on natural gas imports from the United States. I want to fund a world-class system of public transit and revitalize our downtown with creativity and compassion. You know, if you go to our NDP campaign office, David, on Laurier Street, you'll see a signed letter over our photocopier from Jack Layton. It was his final message to Canadians. In that letter, he said, Canada is a great country, one of the hopes of the world, a great country that could be made even better with more equality, justice, and opportunity. And Jack used to always tell us, don't let anyone tell you that it can't be done. So what I'm asking people to consider tonight is to vote for a member of parliament like Ed, like Paul, that will build the city and the country of our dreams by working constructively and collaboratively with others, by changing politics, bringing people in, and raising our expectations again. That's what I want to do for you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rosenstock. And you can go a little longer if you want.
Thanks. Well, first off, I want to thank you so much to the community associations for their amazing work and for putting together tonight's really important debate. And thank you to everyone here for coming out to hear our vision about how we can make Ottawa Centre and Canada more sustainable, more resilient, and fairer places to live. Greens are ready to work hard to deliver lasting solutions that prioritize people's well-being so that they can reach their full potential while ensuring that we maintain a healthy environment for future generations. If you believe that it's time for change and want to help build a greener future in Ottawa Centre, please come see me or a member of my team after the debate. And to lend your support, you can also go to my website. Again, it's Rosenstock4, like the number 4, OC.ca. Thank you again.
Thank you. And Mr. Naqvi.
Kind strength. That's the message I got from a woman in Old Ottawa East who I was talking to when I was door knocking. And she reminded me that Canada is a strong country, but Canadians are always kind. And that message really struck with me. In fact, I told her that I'm going to use that as my guiding post from now on. Canada doesn't need chaos. It needs compassion. It needs courage, kindness, and strength. It needs a plan to fight back the assault from Donald Trump, to protect our country, and build our economy. It needs leaders like Mark Carney who know how to build, not to tear things down. If you believe in that Canada that believed in my family and I, then let's fight for it together. I'm asking you to vote for Yasir Naqvi, vote Liberal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, neighbors, I live in this riding too. I see no way that people could be cynical about politics after hearing these people. make their cases. 3 tremendous candidates, others who are not on the stage, but who will be happy to talk to you afterwards. Everyone who is running for office is taking a chance, putting themselves out there, working their tails off from dawn to dusk and beyond. So let's hear it for all 9 of them. And to the enormous group of community associations who all work together to put this together, to Knox Church for the venue, and to the people who let me do this. It is a privilege. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, David.